This is a brief presentation on the Big Bulk Kinskuch Gold Copper Silver project. The project's licenses are held in the case of the Big Bulk licenses 100% by LCT Holdings, and in the case of Kinskuch in yellow on the title map in the bottom left by the Rand Edgar Smythe Syndicate, effectively by LCT Holdings and two holding companies each owned by Bill Rand and Brian Edgar. The properties are effectively available as a single project or as separate projects. We believe they offer a gold, copper, silver project of high merit, effectively an integrated look at a first-class setting for gold, copper and silver with first world levels of country risk. Good management is available at the same time. Being privately owned, we believe that the properties may well offer a more attractive earn-in path for mid-tier and major companies than properties held already by a public company. While a significant body of information has been accumulated for these licenses over the last 40 years, it's never been drawn together in an integrated study, and much is irregularly distributed. The discovery of Pretium's Valley of the Kings gold deposit at Brucejack, hosting 7 million ounces of gold a few years ago at about 15 grams a ton, prompted a lot of detailed geological study in this area. That's in the Valley of the Kings, Brucejack area. That work has provided us with a fairly good understanding of the genesis of Brucejack and its surrounding porphyry gold and gold copper deposits, and that understanding underscored the similarities between the Brucejack and the Big Bulk regions of the Stikine terrain. Of significance is the fact that a lot of this area is covered by ice and glaciers, and we'll talk later about how they are retreating, but just look at the extent of glacial cover. This is a map probably accurate in the late 90s, and these glaciers have retreated, but near their cores they haven't. Here is Brucejack, here is SK Creek. Not a lot of exposure of the important Hazelton-Stikine contact between Brucejack and our Kinskuch project area, but as we'll see in a moment, the very large exposure in the Kinskuch area has a very significant extent of Stuhini-Hazelton contact. Also very important is that where there is exposure, there are significant gold deposits, in particular Red Mountain, premier gold mining area, which has been drilled at the moment significantly by Ascot Resources, and then the Homestake and Dolly Varden deposits down here. This slide shows us zoomed into the license area, the yellow licenses constituting the Kinskuch project, the brown licenses constituting the Big Bulk licenses held by LCT Holding, and the pink licenses showing some Big Bulk ground held by Dolly Varden Silver Resources, which also holds the Dolly Varden camp in this area, and in red the Homestake Resource Corporation. In green down in the south is now called Alloy Core, used to be called Avanti. This is the company that is fully permitted to build a $800 million mine around the Kitsault molybdenum deposit. The blue here is Alice Arm, seawater. This is the town of Alice Arm, and this is a two-wheel drive road access from Kitsault to Terrace. On the right hand side, at the same scale, we see the residual magnetics plotted over a digital terrain model. The residual magnetics for 2/3 of the Kinskuch license having been flown at 100-meter line spacing by Homestake Resources when they had this property under option in 2011, and kindly supplied to us by Dolly Varden are the magnetics flown by Dolly Varden also in 2011 over their property. Plotted over top of these layers are the targets we'll discuss in later slides on both Big Bulk and the Kinskuch licenses. Big Bulk and the aliens targets being the most important at this stage, but a pipeline of targets, some of them also drill ready, such as Esperanza and Goldstream, a pipeline of targets on the Kinskuch license. If I haven't already mentioned it, the Kinskuch license is 600 square kilometers, 625 square kilometers, just a little less the size of the island of Singapore. The Big Bulk license area adds another 3,000 hectares to that. One of the reasons for showing this geophysics data set is that it is such a high quality data set. There's an equivalent layers, radiometrics, conductivity and resistivity, because the survey in 2011 was an EM survey, and none of this data has been subject to a truly integrated interpretation with the geochemistry, digital terrain, structural models, and so on. The data can be evaluated online in an interactive map at the address showing above. The next slide then characterizes what we consider an immediate drill target at Big Bulk. It's centered around a borehole drilled in 2003 by Canadian Empire, which ended in mineralization. The borehole is shown on the right, and we have recovered the core, which is available for examination. The bottom 50 meters of the borehole drilled on the edge of the lake and under the lake was running 50 meters at 0.3% copper and 0.21 gold. Incidentally, at the top of the hole there was 21 meters at 0.86% copper and 0.64% gold. We have, not in this presentation but available for view online as well, three-dimensional model of the footprint of a typical BC porphyry, 300 by 300 meters, underneath the lake, which is the target of the proposed drilling program. Mining of this discovery, should it be made, would not be open pit but underground from a deeply incised Kitsalt River valley about 8 kilometers to the west. The valley bottom is about 800 to 900 meters below the lake level here, so providing ideal deep horizontal access to the target being proposed here. Photographs at the bottom of the slide show half core from which thin sections were taken from Anglo Gold's borehole AGA 04, which was drilled here about 150 to 200 meters from the Dolly Varden Big Bulk boundary to the LCT Holdings Big Bulk boundary, which is this side. These thin sections, which are also available for inspection, illustrate the multi-phase nature of the Big Bulk intrusion, ranging from strongly potassic to not much potassium at all, and the multi-phase veining present as well. The third picture was taken in 2003 and shows the visible gold found on vein surfaces on the LCT holding ground right here, which would have been covered by ice until about 2000. The work program proposed for 2016 is approximately 3 500-meter diamond drill holes to be drilled, one probably twinning the 2003 hole and just continuing another 3 meters into the target area, and assuming reasonable success on that one, just a fan out sideways at appropriate angles to scope the horizontal size of the porphyry. We hope will be sitting there and hopefully at grades similar to those encountered near the top of the hole, rather than not getting any higher than those at the bottom. The work program for 2016 includes $75,000 for heliborne mag survey, minimum of $75,000, as well as about $120,000 for detailed structural mapping and lithogeochemistry of the entire Lavender Peak Massif. Lavender Peak being the mountain at the top of the slope, and the Massif being including a couple of other peaks which correspond with the magnetic high, which we'll see in a later presentation. I beg your pardon, in a later slide. Moving on to the geology of the area then, a key element of the big bulk geology is recent work by the BC Geological Survey, which confirms the age of the intrusive in the big bulk area. It includes Dolly Varden and that area as being Texas Creek. That's the same age as the Premier deposits here and the intrusions around Brucejack, that's Snowfield, Kerr, Sulphurets, Mitchell, and so on. Of the big bulk geology is its proximity to the Stuhini-Hazelton contact, which zigzags backwards and forwards across the Kinskuch property here, and then wanders into Dolly Varden and Homestake ground, probably exerting important controls on the Dolly Varden deposits and the Homestake deposit. Intrusives are widespread on the Kinskuch property, not only at big bulk, but in a number of other areas, many of which are not shown on any government maps. Mapping of any kind of detail at big bulk or anywhere on the Kinskuch claims for that matter was in 2002 by Graham Evans, working for Tech Corporation, during which time he was working on both big bulk and the Homestake deposit. In 2008 we invited Dr. Andrei Panteleev to review drill core from the big bulk area, during which in 2008 about 6 or 7 holes were drilled, primarily on Dolly Varden Silver's big bulk claim. Dr. Panteleev reviewed our core and at the time said it looked more like Brucejack than any other core he'd seen in British Columbia. In sections from 2009, Dr. Panteleev's report is available for review. We believe that geological work required in this area is a new detailed geological map showing lithologies and alteration of the big bulk intrusive complex, and a regional map of the intrusives at Kinskuch, Homestake and Dolly Varden, which would be more easy to derive now given the better airborne geophysical coverage that we have now. From sharing similar lithologies, namely the Stikine terrain with the Stuhini-Hazelton contact being very nearby, both in the Alice Arm area and in the Brucejack area, there are other important structural similarities. In particular, the fact that the Brucejack area is characterized by a central antiform called the McTagg anticlinorium, on the side of which occur both VMS, epithermal and porphyry deposits, the classic VMS one being SK Creek. We have the same situation down at Big Bulk, where the antiform is named the Maguire anticlinorium, and along or associated with its axis the Big Bulk copper gold porphyry intrusives. There's another one down here called FH, and intrusive activity right across the Dolly Varden and Homestake properties with their gold and silver epithermal or VMS deposits. Intervening ground shown as Hazelton here is really covered in ice. If we turn our attention to the surface geochemistry, just two really important, I think, observations to make here. Most of the property has not been sampled in any density at all. These two maps only show the 2008 sampling carried out by Durango, but the distribution of samples is about the same for Tex 2001 and 2009 two sampling, and sampling done in the 90s before that by Kiwiton Engineering. Mostly this was constrained by the ice extent, as we'll see in a later slide. The pullback of the glaciers here and here in particular, and up here, makes available much more outcrop now for sampling. Important observation is that as one moves from the Dolly Varden silver property, controlled property, across into LCT Holdings big bulk property, there's a significant shift from copper enhancement relative to gold on Dolly Varden's property to gold enhancement with respect to copper on the LCT Holdings claims. This is where the visible gold was found, and here we see some channel sampling being carried out by myself and a couple of helpers in 2015. This is a view of the visible gold on the vein surface here in 2013. Moving on to underground geochemistry, the best intersection in the big bulk system itself has been mentioned already. Most historical drilling to any depth has been carried out on Dolly Varden's property, most of that by Durango in 2008, and then 3 deep holes, 700-meter holes by Anglo Gold in 2009, 1, 2, and 3. And if one evaluates these holes, it's very clear that we move in those holes as well from copper predominance to gold predominance, and greater potassium, I think, as well in this hole. Here we see a multi-element downhole profile for borehole AGA 04. Purple, copper in the red, sulfur in orange, and molybdenum, low molybdenum, but corresponding to some extent with the copper in red in the final column on the right. All of the holes drilled by Durango in 2008 and by Anglo Gold in 2009 were analyzed in their entirety, all by 4-acid digestion. All of these results are available for analysis by the Halley-Tosdell geochemical vectoring methods, which are well documented in the Economic Geology newsletter of a couple of years ago, as well as if one had the time and money to relog all the core again, Riedel Profit vein vectoring, as recently documented by Brock Riedel and Dr. Profit. Key element of the geophysics at Kinskuch, of course, is the large survey carried out by Homestake in 2011, which really hasn't been truly interpreted at all. Also relevant, though, is an important IP study carried out mostly on the Dolly Varden section of the big bulk claims in 2008, which was drilled in 2009. This IP survey picking up very nicely the chargeability of all the sulfide that we believe to be peripheral to the central core of the intrusion, and the sulfide evident as well in the high levels of sulfur in the core, as shown in the previous slide. But the regional magnetics for the area, it's clear that big bulk sits in the middle of a regional magnetic high, which corresponds very closely with what we're calling the Lavender Peak Massif, which runs here down the gap in high resolution flying carried out by Homestake in 2011. That this magnetic high represents the extent of multi-phase intrusive system, and it just so happens to be the area not flown and therefore proposed for flying in 2016 by a joint plan to attack both the the Big Bulk licenses outlined in red here, and this part of the Kinskuch license. Budget is $75,000 to fill in most of this gap, high resolution mag, but that wouldn't provide for Z-TEM flying, which is desirable for this kind of environment and the kind of targeting, porphyry targeting contemplated here for large-scale structures. More about that on the budget slide at the end of this presentation. Taking a look now at structures at Big Bulk. Key elements. Rift inversion was documented in 2008 by Collar at Kinskuch, and in 2014 by Nelson at Brucejack, where mesothermal gold mineralization is post-Texas Creek age and structurally controlled. Last year in 2015, I carried out high-resolution drone surveying, that's unmanned airborne vehicle based photogrammetry, just over the LCT Holdings part of the Big Bulk license to produce very much higher resolution digital elevation models that are available from any other source. We're using these right now to start doing very detailed structural domain mapping to integrate with the 2008 larger scale structural work carried out by Collar. This orthophotograph again in a later slide discussing glaciers, but even here it's worth pointing out that this area was all covered by ice until about 2000. This is where the visible gold was found. One can see how far back the ice has pulled. This is the extent of the photogrammetric survey, which now needs to be extended further up the mountain. Underlying the color orthophotograph is a black and white orthophotograph dated at about 1995. A few words now on the mining logistics at Big Bulk. Key elements: vehicle access to the Kinskuch property boundary all year round along this road that's been upgraded to service the permitted molybdenum open pit mine. The property is alongside tidewater. Power lines run to the Kinskuch boundary. The power lines already go and have done for a while to the molybdenum mine here. They also run up Highway 37 to service Red Chris and other developments. There's been a long history of mining at Dollyvarden. This book, Steel Rails and Silver Dreams, is a hardcover book available on Amazon.com. Describes the heyday of mining at Alisarm from about, 1915 to 1963. Already mentioned the $800 million project permitted at Kitsault, waiting for the molybdenum price to improve. To our immediate west here, we have Homestake Ridge with about 1 million ounce gold equivalent resource, high grade underground mine target, and then at Dollyvarden, just to the south of Homestake, recently published resource of 40 million ounces of silver waiting to be mined. Here we have better detail provided on the proposed 8-kilometer tunnel that one could build from the Kinskuch Lake, 8 kilometers to the existing road that runs up the Kitsault River Valley. The idea being that this this tunnel would be ideal for taking out any porphyry discovered under or close to the lake. Incidentally, it's a similar distance to a similar altitude in the easterly direction, raising all sorts of possibilities for if a discovery was made here, for example, underground mining it and taking the ore out down one of these valleys or this valley instead of the Kitsault Valley. The next slide gives us a more detailed look at glacial retreat. This is a picture that shows the ice extent, and here we see the glacier breaking off into the lake in 1966 when this photograph was taken, and this photograph I took from a helicopter in 2015. This is where the visible gold was found, and we can see how far back up the mountain the glacier has retreated. In other words, way back up into this ice here. I published a poster on this orthophotographic work at Big Bulk at Roundup this year. This is an extract from that poster and shows the line of the glacier at around about 1966. 2005, another line was plotted by glaciologists doing a study of the whole of British Columbia, and then we can see how the glaciers pulled back from 2005 to 2016. Depending on how steep the ground is, there will be less of a pullback. So in this steep area here, the glacier hasn't pulled back that far. It's pulled back further on this alluvial fan, and on this gradational rock slope, it's pulled back a lot further. One of the targets that we'll mention later on in the presentation is the so-called high copper and gold grab samples, which have been collected 20 or 30 years ago up in the high mountains around here. These will also have been subject to glacial extent, to glacial retreat, much more amenable to prospecting now. And I include on this slide text which I'll read quickly. The second zone at the Nicky mineral occurrence, which is just in here on the boundary of the Big Bulk and the Kinskuch package, is located on a bench northwest of the main glacier, draining the northwestern portion of the claims. The showing consists of quartz veins up to 20 centimeters wide with chalcopyrite, malachite, native copper, and visible gold. The veins occur within and paralleling dacitic to rhyolitic dikes. Values of up to 57 grams a ton gold, 91 grams a ton silver, and 3.6% copper have been returned from the veins. Similar veins are believed to have been found by Kiwitan geologists in 1999 across the main glacier to the south. Values of up to 73 grams a ton gold and 16% copper were reported from these veins as well. This area was not looked at in the 1996 program. Although the grades are spectacular, the veins are rather narrow. Well, that was the opinion of a geologist in 1996. Now, there's no way we'd expect to get these Zambian copper belt grades in the mountains here, but what they witness is the metals in the system and the requirement, the justification to channel sample these areas and to fly the right kind of geophysical tools to detect deeper porphyry or epithermal bodies sitting associated with or under these glaciers. We move on now to our Ilians drill target, characterized by Homestake in 2011, when, on interpreting the airborne geophysical survey results, which showed a nice conductor corresponding with some historical drilling, Homestake went in and drilled 4 holes quickly at the end of the season and encountered 3 meters of 267 grams silver, 1% lead and 6.5% zinc in this borehole, and supported by 1.6 meters of 330 grams a ton silver, 5% lead, 15% zinc in an adjoining hole. Then 200 meters away, 3 meters at 318 grams silver, 2% lead, and 6.5% zinc. Interestingly, because this is in the Ilians Valley, it's a lot lower level and can be drilled or can be worked until early November, which is roughly when these holes were drilled. What Homestake proposed and we support is another 4 holes with the approximate locations indicated on this graphic. On this slide and in all the subsequent slides, we will have a postage-sized map of the geology of the Kinskuch area with a star showing where the target is located. So the red star here shows where the aliens target is. If we move on to our gold stream target, this is a discovery by Durango in 2007 based on stream sediment sampling in 2006. Nicely zoned gold, arsenic, copper, silver, zinc, manganese anomaly. Slightly rubbly area close to a river, difficult to see outcrop geology, but crying out for 3 or 400 to 200 meter diamond holes to check the underlying geology and the associated EM conductor. This gold stream anomaly is to the northeast of the Ilians and significantly up stratigraphy, much closer to the Bowser, right up in the SK Creek stratigraphy. Jumping now to the southwest of the license, we come to the Esperanza drill target, epithermal gold or SK Creek gold silver by nature, primary evidence 500 meter gold silver soil anomaly over historic underground workings supported by arsenic, antimony, zinc and molybdenum. Upper Hazelton EM conductor. This target is an easy 2-minute or 3-minute drive from Alice Arm. We've proposed 4 diamond holes as was proposed by Homestake for this year, although depending on the preferences of any partner coming in to work with us, we think this money may be better spent on a Z10 survey of the Big Bulk area, saving this drilling for later in the exploration pipeline. 15 kilometers to the northwest of Esperanza, probably following the lower Hazelton conductor rather than the upper Hazelton conductor that we see associated with Esperanza, is the Kit gold target, a multi-element anomaly, primarily gold supported by other elements. This is not at the drill ready stage yet, hasn't received any work since 1991, but with some fairly exciting grades and now a conductor associated with it, definitely needs some geological work this season. In 2007, Durango, who incidentally were working under my direction at that time, conducted reconnaissance work or following up some soil anomalies detected by Kinskuch Engineering in 1991 just north of Kinskuch Lake, and discovered clearly documented crowded porphyries, malachite staining, zinc and lead anomalies, carbonate alteration, all of which need a fair bit more geological mapping and geochemical sampling. If the ZTEM work and airborne magnetics could be extended to that area too, so much the better for prospecting for gold copper porphyries in the area. Finally, targets already discussed, the so-called high copper gold in rocks targets. These are scattered grab samples collected in 1991 and 1990 by Kinskuch Engineering up in the higher mountains of the Lavender Massif, followed up and confirmed in 1996 by a company whose name I've forgotten. These we're calling the high copper gold in rock targets. They will have been subject to considerable glacier retreat since 1996, and we're proposing this year a work that the airborne geophysics cover them and a work program of $25,000 on the ground, mostly helicopter time, extending the mapping and lithogeochemical sampling in this area. In summary then, our proposed exploration program for 2016, Big Bulk Kinskuch combined, totals out at $1.5 million, spread between $600,000 on Big Bulk, $300,000 on Alliance, $200,000 on Goldstream. Then some geological surface work being done on Kit Gold, St. David JC and High, and the $250,000 for drilling Esperanza we have in brackets because depending on who is funding this work, the objectives, if one's targets are gold, copper, porphyries, might be better served by spending this $250,000 on a greater extent of airborne surveying here and including ZTEM, rather than drilling a fourth target in the same year. There's no doubt that the ownership group of these claims would, with the right partner, be prepared to contemplate extending this program over 2 years, with perhaps 750,000 this year and 750 next. As an appendix to this presentation, we've included what amounts to years of work and what would take another hour to explain in any detail, but it doesn't seem right to present this work for the Kinskuch Big Bulk area without providing more detail on the great strides made in the last 3 years in understanding the geological and structural evolution of the setting for Brucejack, Kerr, Sulphurets, Snowfield and Mitchell, as documented by Nelson and Kaiba in 2014, the geology really along the McTagg anticlinorium, and then similar structures being documented for Dolly Varden, shown in the bottom right here, and for Homestake, shown in the top left. Most of the thinking done here by Rob MacDonald for Homestake, and I'm not sure for who by Dolly Varden. But the similarities between the structural settings and the stratigraphic context of both these environments is obvious. What's important as well is that Dave Collar, in his work for us in 2008, in his work for Durango, noted inverse rifting, which was first documented in the Brucejack area by Joanne Nelson and Jeff Kaiba in 2014. So Dave Collar's work in 2008 is truly important in drawing the parallels between Big Bulk, Kinskuch and Brucejack, particularly with its implications for mineralization along inverse rifting, similar to Brucejack, and so on. In 2014, Rob MacDonald published a synthesis of his knowledge of the Kinskuch Homestake area, represented here, Homestake, Dolly Varden, Kinskuch, and what he called regional, which is SK Creek, and then here Premier, Brucejack, Red Mountain, Kerr, Sulphurets, Mitchell, and Snowfields. Well, this thinking must change a little given now the new dating work done by the BC Geological Survey and published towards the end of last year and again at Roundup this year, where they bring Big Bulk in at about 195 million years and Dolly Varden and Homestake a little after that. No time to go into this in a lot more detail now. The final slide that I like to put up when discussing these matters is a slide I prepared in 2006 showing at a similar scale the Lachlan Belt in New South Wales and the Philippines, plotted at the same scale as British Columbia. And just to give an idea of how 3 environments identified for their affinities for high gold, copper porphyries, alkalic rocks, how well British Columbia does in terms of exposed area other than that covered by ice for looking for these deposits on an international low risk basis. Thank you for your time, and anyone who's interested enough in this presentation to wish to discuss it further, please contact me, Clinton Smythe, at cpsmythe@msn.com, or just go to the website www.bigbulk.ca and get our details from there. Thank you again.